And welcome once again to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and you can find me on Twitter at Bob McDonald. And joining me, of course, is my co-host, Jimmy Lemke.
Good whatever time of day it is, wherever you are listening to this, everybody.
And Jimmy can be found at PantherU on Twitter. And you can find the podcast on Twitter as well at Horizon RT. So we're getting close to the halfway point here, and it looks like things are shaking out as we kind of expected. There's a gigantic logjam between places 4 and 8. I guess obviously the one surprise being Detroit, but still sitting at the top is Northern Kentucky. Guess we can't be surprised.
Northern Kentucky, after that one little hiccup at Oakland, put it back together.
Yeah, so, and I guess, I guess Cleveland State cures all ills, I suppose.
Yeah, we call Cleveland State a palate cleanser.
Yeah, that's what we are now, Cleveland State fans. We're palate cleansers. Congratulations. That's us now. This is what happened in the course of the last 3 months. We came from not as bad as we thought we were going to, not as bad as predicted to palate cleansers. I don't get that at all. I really don't. I mean, you have to work really hard to be 0-8 in this conference. I mean, seriously. You have to work really, really hard to be 0-8 in this conference. And it's not like they didn't have any shot. It's not like they haven't had any opportunities to actually win. They could have won. They could have won at Milwaukee. They could have won at Green Bay. They were up on Oakland in the first half of that game,
Yep.
And now they're sitting at 0-8. And the last 4 games have looked even worse than the first 4. So, I don't know what the hell they're doing. If they don't beat Youngstown State on Saturday, I don't know what the hell. I don't know when the hell the next win's going to be. I don't know if there's going to be another win, honestly. So have fun with that, Cleveland State fans, and you're stuck with Dennis Felton for another year. So congratulations.
And Youngstown State only lost to Northern Kentucky by like 8 yesterday.
And let's not forget too that Youngstown was up on Wright State too in their game. They actually were up on Youngstown. Youngstown State was actually up on Wright State during that game. But obviously Wright State came in and didn't have they turned it around and did what they needed to do. They probably needed that win more than anybody because they didn't want to be down. They didn't want to be down with the same record. Down at the bottom 2. Nobody, especially when you're predicted to be one of the top 2 teams, you don't want to be down there. So they need it more than anybody. And then come Saturday, they come in and they just looked. Wright State looked every bit the top contender. Now, mind you, of course, once again, they are playing Cleveland State. And I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I knew on Thursday Tyree Appleby was out of the game. He was battling an illness, so I knew. I guess you could put a big old asterisk next to that game against Northern Kentucky. Even though, come on, you can't. They were killing it behind the 3-point line. Tyler Sharp killed them. Drew McDonald was killing them. That's what Northern Kentucky does. So
Drew McDonald kills everybody.
It was actually more Tyler Sharp. Tyler Sharp at one point in time, I think, scored 12 consecutive points during that game. Tyler Sharp did that. So that's that. Yeah, I mean, and I remember last episode saying specifically saying specifically that Northern, for all I know, Northern Kentucky could go in and start shooting, start shooting 3-pointers, which admittedly they don't do that great. They're pretty good, but they're not that great. First the first 5 field goals of there were 3-pointers at the outset of that game. So I guess people are listening to me. So hey, shout out to you guys.
Hey, we got we had a sinker against Youngstown State, so hopefully.
But
you guys
good news
don't.
for you that Milwaukee's kind of turned it around though a little bit.
Hey, we swept the week, man.
I know that's really good for you guys. I mean, that's and you. I know last we spoke, you were kind of lamenting kind of the worst case scenario over at Milwaukee, but Milwaukee's part of the logjam. I mean, yeah, there was between places 4 and 8. All those teams are either 3-4 or 4-3. There are plenty of opportunities for them, for everybody in that group. But Milwaukee's 4-3, so that's a big deal. I mean, especially again since you were a little apprehensive of them not even making the conference tournament to come out of the week with 2 wins. That's great.
It's still very early.
It is still very early.
We're not yet at the halfway point. I mean, we are coming up on the halfway point.
We are.
So,
yeah, next weekend is the halfway point. So, yeah. So,
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's still plenty of opportunities for it is still too early. There are plenty of opportunities for some of the teams between 4 through 8 to kind of fall through the cracks. I don't see Cleveland State getting up there. I think their season's going to get. I mean, I love how everybody says wait until February. Fine, I'm going to wait till February and realize, holy shit, they're not making the conference tournament. That's going to be a fun day. But I'm sick of talking about them. I want to talk about the guys. I want to talk about the guys at the top. So Northern Kentucky. Yeah, so we talked a little bit about Northern Kentucky. I think for them moving forward. They're looking every much like the regular season contender. The regular season, they want the regular season title. They want some revenge for their tournament last season. So I'm looking very forward to seeing what they have what they're going to be doing moving forward. They're sitting at 16-4 right now. It's almost a pretty foregone conclusion that they're gonna win 20 games this year, and for them. It's going to be a matter of getting over the disappointment of last year at Motor City Madness and winning the regular season title, winning the tournament, and leave no doubt, really. So, I think they're on the mission.
The games. The thing that you really got to worry about with the team like Northern Kentucky is that Drew McDonald's a standard bearer, but like you said, Tyler Sharp can kill you.
Yes.
But there's even guys outside the starting lineup.
Oh yeah, that is true.
Robinson is a player.
Yeah, he was torching Cleveland State too on Thursday. Yeah, absolutely.
Did he?
Yeah, I mean he was getting off 3-pointers along with everybody else. Yeah, he did extremely well on Thursday.
I'm hoping that they got it out of their system and they'd like to lose a couple games, or maybe one game, preferably Saturday.
Yeah, because you got Milwaukee. We got Northern Kentucky, Milwaukee coming up.
Wisconsin heads to the Cincinnati area for the 2 games.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be. Yeah, I mean, that one's going to be big for. Well, and I think the other thing too in Milwaukee's case, because I think that's going to be a big test for them. Because
Agreed.
Again, you're kind of working under low. You were when we last spoke, we were talking under kind of lowered expectations for Milwaukee.
Expectations.
Exactly. So if you got nothing to lose, you're going to give these guys your best shot. That's what I think. least I would if I was in Milwaukee's shoes.
What I liked about the Thursday game for us was that we didn't really, Darius Roy is a guy who, when we win, we've been really leaning on him.
Sure.
And against UIC, he had 7 points. He was not doing very well. He was at a bad shooting. And everybody came out of the woodwork. We had 5 guys in double figures that night. DeAndre Abram was just an absolute monster that night. Like he had 19 and 16.
Yeah.
Bryce Barnes looked like the player that we all thought he could have been when he was recruited.
Sure.
Jake Wright's shots falling. Vance Johnson was actually doing very well. I mean, it was a very good game for most of them.
Sure. What I like, and I see kind of. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, I was glad that we could spread it out instead of having, leaning on just Darius Roy doing well. Darius didn't actually do all that right.
Sure.
Thursday was one of his worst games of the year.
Yeah.
But the rest of the team, mostly, and really DeAndre Abram.
Yeah.
I mean, they picked up the pieces and they ran with it, and they took the game.
Yeah, and I mean, you could see, and realistically, you could see that with. I could see that with the. You really can see that in that Milwaukee team where you kind of do have the ability to you kind of make up for lost scoring as they did against UIC. And then, of course, IUPUI rolls around and, all is right with the world again. But that's the thing. That's really the thing that has really emerged within the Horizon League. You gotta have you gotta have a primary and secondary scorer ready to go at all times. And if you got a primary scorer having an off night, you got to have that secondary scorer come in, and you got to have the rest of those guys pick up the slack, which Milwaukee did against UIC.
Agreed. There are very few teams who do well in this conference with a one-man show. And in fact, oftentimes you can have a really good one-man show and do very poorly. And that the team that proves that more often than not is Youngstown State.
Well,
Cameron Morse, Quinn Humphrey. These are teams where one guy goes out and just absolutely smokes the competition, but the rest of his team is so bad that they just don't do well.
Yeah.
So
that was kind of. But I mean, realistically, that was kind of. That was Youngstown's MO forever. I guess the question now becomes: are they getting to the point where they can transition out of that? I don't know if they're quite there yet. The record would suggest that they're not quite there yet. Obviously. Against Wright State, you had their freshman Darius Quisenberry go off. That one's going to be an interesting situation because it seems to me that with Youngstown State, unlike years past, they are trying to kind of diversify themselves in terms of scoring. I don't know if they're there yet. But you look around the rest of the league, Cleveland State notwithstanding, they still have this problem. Major problem. Also defense. But you look around the rest of the league, and you see those first and second scoring options. Even in Detroit, where you obviously have, a superstar in Antoine Davis, and we'll get to them. We'll get to Detroit. We'll get to him later when we talk about Oakland. there's that second, Josh McFawley has come back into the fold, and he is now becoming that second scoring option. So, but as you mentioned, that's been the overall success of the teams that have done well in this league. They're not relying on just one guy most of the time. They have one guy, and it is.
We look at recent years. You look at Kay Felder. Oakland. Yeah. Kay Felder was by far the best player on the team.
Sure.
Yeah, but they had 4 other guys.
Oh, absolutely. They did.
Not just beat you, but kill you on any given night.
You bet.
We just talked about it a couple minutes ago. Drew McDonald does really well, but on any given night, Tate's going to come and beat you. Sharp's going to come and beat you.
Robinson will come in now.
He's going to come out of the bench and beat you.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's very important. I mean, the deeper you are, the better your prospects.
Yep.
So, and that's the deeper you are at the top of your roster, and that's the deeper you are at the back of your roster.
Exactly.
Now I remember Youngstown State when they had Blake Allen, Kendrick Perry, and Damian Ergel.
Yes.
Those are 3 all-conference level players at Youngstown State.
Yes, very true.
The team still did not do very well.
No, they didn't.
Because after those 3, they were trash. So it really kind of sucked because they really were 3 talented. I mean, they were just as talented as any 3 players Butler had, any 3 players Milwaukee had, any 3 players Cleveland State had. So for Youngstown State to have for that to be their best 3, and then they're surrounded by nothing, just really kind of sucked.
And thus representing the legacy of Jerry Slocum.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to throw it all on Slocum, or was it Robich? Was the guy that
Robich and Slocum? Yeah.
I mean, they've just ever since they came up to the to the Horizon League from the Mid-Con, it's all been downhill for them.
Well,
I really wonder how that program would be if they had stayed there.
Yeah,
they were second. They were second in the tournament. They were second in the Mid-Con the year before they came to the Horizon League. Was that a conference was that a conference that they could have succeeded in? Maybe they were a little too big for their britches, which is something that a lot of people don't really talk about. But there are programs that you move up in conference and things don't go quite as well as you'd hoped.
That's right.
It usually doesn't happen with Horizon League teams that have moved up. Have not really. LaSalle's probably the best example of that.
Yeah,
as a Horizon League team that MCC team. Which, by the way, can we bring back the MCC name, please? LaSalle left, and they really haven't been much of anything ever since. The best example of one of our programs is probably Evansville.
Yeah, that's thinking Evansville.
Just been garbage in the MVC for a long time.
I know. That's something.
But Loyola's doing all right. And by the way, for the record, I think Loyola would have been almost as good, if not just as good, as they were the last couple of years if they were still in the Horizon League.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Loyola's growth as a program was not just because of their move to the MVC. It was mostly the facility boost.
Yeah,
that arena is a legitimate tiny arena. Their their people are behind. They've got that. And they had the new practice and office facility there. it's all very tightly packed. They've got that. They have a new student union that's right next to the arena. Like they built everything around it. All the housing's right next to the Gentile Arena.
Yeah, it's true.
It's all. I would credit facilities more than the conference move. Sometimes it doesn't go quite as well.
No, and we've seen and you mentioned it. We've seen it in you mentioned two specific examples of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of us always talk about like, should we move up? Like not should we move up? Like, what conference can we point to? And the more time goes on, the more I think about. I think it was Big D at WSU, not Big D at USC. Got to separate the two of them. I think it was Big D at WSU who said like,
"Yep,
there's a core group of programs here that all share common characteristics as not just athletic programs, but institutions."
Sure.
The UIC, Green Bay, Milwaukee, Wright State, Cleveland State, Youngstown State, and Oakland are all very similar, and now Northern Kentucky actually too, are all very similar universities. If you look at the ones that have left, Butler, non-sectarian private school, Loyola, Jesuit, Valparaiso Lutheran. These are private schools.
Yeah. Well, you kind of saw the framework of the transition from more of the private institution, which is kind of the foundation of what was the MCC and now is the Horizon League, into the public, more of the public institutions. You see that. I mean, we've seen that the entire time we've been here, because obviously our two institutions have been involved in that. What that means for, in the future for maybe expansion, what that means for the only private school left, Detroit Mercy, that's a good question.
It makes me think a couple things. I mean, you brought up Detroit. I do think, Detroit Mercy. I actually think it's a good thing that they're embracing the full name. I think Mercy, it may be better for them long term to look somewhere else.
Possibly.
And in that case, maybe there's one of the other Michigan schools wants to move up. Maybe EMU drops football finally and actually commits, and maybe they want to move over to the Horizon League. That would be an obvious move. Maybe you get a school like one of the schools that's D1 in hockey that wants to go D1 in the rest of their sports. Maybe that's the thing. Or maybe that's why I'd love to have Robert Morris. I don't know if they fit. The more time goes by, the more I feel like Detroit Mercy might be a better fit for the MAAC.
And maybe that was the
like they might be. Well, maybe more Sienna kind of, maybe. And for us, there's, as much as like I hate the idea, especially like 22-year-old me would have punched me in the face for saying this. The alphabet soup schools fit. For everything that I hate about having IUPUI in the conference. And I have strongly disliked the program ever since Ron Hunt left. And I did not, and shout out Ron Hunter. Thank you for, developing George Hill, because he's working out pretty well for the Bucks right now. But for everything with like Ooey Pooey that I gave him crap for, the fact
we both did, man. We both did.
The fact matter is they fit with us.
Yeah, more than we would ever care to admit.
They're not in the jungle. They're not in the jungle anymore. But maybe a long-term thing is to rebuild the jungle into an actual facility for them. The Farmers Coliseum's off campus, so maybe that's not not a really good idea for them long-term. Although, as from everybody I hear, it's actually a pretty nice renovation they did there. and by what I said, the alphabet schools, alphabet soup schools, obviously I'm saying, and IPFW,
Yeah.
you know.
They dropped the I. It's now just Purdue Fort Wayne.
Sorry. PFW.
There you go. They dropped one of the letters out of their alphabet soup. Sorry.
You get cheap beer when you go to a bar run by the veterans of foreign wars.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah. So PFW. Yeah. I mean, sure, they would automatically have the coolest mascots in the Horizon.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude, the Mastodons are the coolest. That's the coolest mascot. And see, I love the Mastodons. They should have like a 15-foot tall, like 5-person Halloween costume of a mastodon walking around their arena.
Yeah, that's yeah, I'm surprised they haven't done that, honestly. So
yeah, they got physical, but like there's other teams.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I think that I would like them to do a rebrand at some point, but maybe an Edwardsville at some point, or it's. You want bigger city schools that are public schools.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the.
And I think as coming from the standpoint of being UWM, and I think I can speak for UIC and IUPUI too.
Uh-huh.
I would prefer that more schools that we would bring in. I feel like if we were to bring in more schools, we should bring in like. We should bring in research institutions.
Interesting.
Because I think that a way that we can get our university on board and getting the entire university community to care about your athletics program and help out your basketball program, because helping out your basketball program can help them out.
Yeah.
And teaching that and telling them that. Excuse me, my dog's barking.
Hey, better yours than mine.
The better it works. So if we were to bring in more players from like a research institutions phase, then the more players we would be able to have. Like I think the more research institutions we bring in, and maybe create another kind of like a research collective between the schools. I think the better we have for, the better opportunity we have to like build our programs internally. So what are the big city public schools in the Midwest that we can really look at as maybe schools that we should add to the Horizon League? So I think that would be it for me. But just kind of thinking about adding to the conference from another angle.
Sure.
I'm going to take a look around next week or so, see if I can come up with any outside of the box ideas.
That's kind of interesting you mentioned that, because that's I never generally, and I don't, I mean, and we don't generally consider that particular aspect of it when we talk about expansion, even though, as we know, the big push, the big focus has been on the academics, and so it's not out of the realm of possibility that the Horizon League is thinking perhaps of an institution that is more prominent in, say, research than.
Well, Purdue Fort Wayne's definitely not that program, I think Fort Wayne's really about like putting together programs that fit.
Yeah.
Other schools that we could. The more that we look towards academics to put together, some kind of research collective, the more it'll benefit schools that are not Tier 1 research institutions. We've got a couple Tier 2, Tier 3 research institutions. Yeah. If we could put together the kind of like group like the Big Ten has, is it the AAU? I can never remember.
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
The Big Ten. One of the strong things that people rarely talk about with the Big Ten is that they actually have a long-standing academic collective of all the Big Ten institutions, as well as as well as University of Chicago, which if it hadn't been for their basically dropping off their athletics program, they would still be a Big Ten university.
That's true. I mean,
so
yeah.
What would Northwestern's billboards say then? Huh?
Interesting. Yeah.
Would they say North Chicago's Big Ten team? Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So we have I do think that we should look at institutions that are like us, and I think we should look at institutions that are that can bring something to the table, not just athletically but academically. I don't think you just add anybody just because, but you can add teams. Maybe when Southern Indiana moves up, I'd have to look at them as an institution, but maybe when Southern Indiana finally makes that long rumored move to Division I, maybe that's a program that we look at.
Yeah. So
the big, I think a really great example is the Big East.
Sure.
The Big East for years was kind of like Conference USA 2.0.
Yeah.
It was these big city football schools that were really good at basketball, like UConn and Cincinnati, Louisville, and then they also had all the traditional Big East kind of programs like Villanova, where they're Villanova has football, but 1AA doesn't really count on this level. They're traditional Catholic basketball schools, and now when you look at that conference, Butler is sticking out like a sore thumb in that conference because they're not Catholic.
That's true.
It's still a small private urban school.
That is true, and I didn't even think about that part either.
Well, yeah, when you look at it, and Creighton, when they added, that's a Jesuit school. Marquette, Jesuit. And for the listeners who aren't aware, Jesuits are an educational centric order of Catholic priests, basically. They're Catholic. So, but Creighton, Marquette. This is where a long term, if Loyola really, really, really wants to get somewhere,
yeah,
that if they could figure out what they were doing, maybe. But they're also in the town with DePaul, so it's still probably not. Probably a school if they would and this is a 40-year project, but a Detroit Mercy if they wanted to move up.
That's true.
If they could if Detroit Mercy could figure out how to be the next Butler in the Horizon League, and they could really whoop it up, and maybe Callahan Hall gets a renovation that makes it so that the hallways are larger or wider than my ass, then they might be able to move up to that point. But they academically as a university, they fit the profile. They're a Jesuit school. For every team that leaves, Detroit Mercy becomes less and less like the rest of the conference.
Yeah,
and it sucks because they've been here since year 2 of the conference.
That's true.
The last charter member left a few years back.
Yep.
In Loyola. So this conference has, I don't want to say evolved, but it's changed.
Yeah.
Now, we can start as conference realignment really has started to wind down.
Mm-hmm.
We should really start to look at keeping programs that are like us. That's why I'm not so sure Robert Morris is the best bet for an 11 to 12 team, because Robert Morris, while they've been very good at basketball until the last couple of years, and while they have a newly updated arena that's really nice, and while they have the practice facility and the conference championships and all those things, I'm not sure they really fit us.
And I think moving forward, and I mentioned that I would prefer Robert Morris, but I think moving forward, I do. To me, they at least seem to me to be. My comparison would be they're Detroit without the hang-ups that Detroit has had over the years.
Yeah.
Which is why I thought that they may be a viable candidate. But let's face it, if they were, don't you think they would have been invited to come to the league a long time ago? And they haven't been. So, so maybe we're now at the point where the conference is looking more on the public side, which is why a Robert Morris no longer fits anymore, and that's why you see potentially a Fort Wayne, or if they jump up to D1, a Southern Indiana come up, where they make a lot more sense than a Robert Morris from an institutional standpoint. So that is something to consider. And by the way, I'm glad you brought up Detroit. Because before we go, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Detroit-Oakland game. That was a hell of a game. Oakland did exactly what they needed to do in that game. They, we talked earlier in the show about that diversity of scoring options. In that win in Oakland's win against Detroit Mercy, you saw that everywhere. You saw that all over the place. You saw, that you saw an inside-out game like in Oakland that is probably what we should have been. Between Javen Coverland on the outside, Xavier Hillmays on the inside. The Detroit Mercy didn't really have any answers for them until they just, for whatever reason, the Oakland took their foot off the brake and foot off the accelerator, and Detroit Mercy came back at them hard. But when you look at Oakland, you look at Oakland, they're definitely outperforming where I thought they would be. I don't think they're there in terms of getting to Northern Kentucky, although, as we know, Oakland is the only team that beat Northern Kentucky, so you never know.
And I will say this: I think Brad Brechting's coming a little more into his own. He seems to be more comfortable.
Yeah, he was
in lane than he has been up to this point.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Brad Brechting because by the way, I'm still holding out for my Brad Brechting breakout game. By the way, but yeah, when you saw him on the boards yesterday on Saturday against Detroit, he was all over the place. Yeah. He got 9 boards, so he was all over the place.
Did he have more or less than Blackshear?
He had more. One more, actually. Blackshear had 8. Really? Blackshear had 8. Brechting had 9.
So,
yeah. Impressive. Kamari Newman actually had 8 boards, too, by the way. But the big thing with Brechting is 4 of those boards were offensive. So he was cleaning up the offensive glass really well.
Which is extremely important in a close game.
Absolutely.
Often, one of the 4 factors to winning a basketball game is your offensive rebound rate.
Yeah, that's true.
How much of your possible offensive rebounds are you getting?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're getting those, or you're getting more, basically you're getting more offensive rebounds than the other guys, you have a fairly good chance to win. You're 25% of the way there.
Sure.
It's your efficient field goal percentage, which is just your field goal percentage adjusting for the actual points that go in. So it's not true shooting percentage that brings in free throws, but your efficient field goal percentage is, field goals are worth 2, 3-point field goals are worth 3. What a novel idea. You have those 2 things, you're half of the way there.
Yeah.
Your turnover percentage. How much are you turning the ball over? Obviously, if we're protecting the ball, you do pretty well. Milwaukee does a pretty decent job protecting the ball. But if you do a pretty good job protecting the ball, you're 75% of the way there then.
You got it. Yeah.
The 4 factors. I will say this. I didn't really notice it until that website statsheet.com was around for a few years.
Yeah.
I love statsheet.com, by the way. I really wish statsheet.com would still be around. Because you could, as a guy who ran Panther U, you could embed all kinds of you could embed all kinds of tables and stuff.
Wow.
I know Basketball Reference. I mean, it's a little bit of a nerdy website thing, but like Basketball Reference could do that too. But like, it's a little, like how it looks. You have to go in and bust out the CSS and really like play with it to make it look okay.
I like Basketball Reference. It is kind of a little complicated though to kind of get into to delve in all that data though.
Yeah, that's okay. It's just collecting data.
Yeah,
just fantastic.
So,
but if you notice on Basketball Reference, one thing they have on each page, on each game page, they talk about the 4 factors. And if you win 3 of the 4 factors or 4 of the 4 factors, you are almost undoubtedly going to win the game.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And from what I could tell, that's what happened with Oakland on Saturday. I think that return game at the arena is going to be just as good. I think that returns game is going to be just as good. I'm looking forward to it, and of course we got to wait like a month to see it, but still, it's going to be a barn burner.
We should start wrapping this up because I've got a dog who's staring out the back window, and I think that if anything comes across, you can start barking.
Yeah, and my voice is kind of running out of gas. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm a little under the weather this week. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up for everyone. You can find episodes of the Horizon Roundtable on sportsax.com, hax.com, and you can find episodes of the Horizon Roundtable on wherever you can find podcasts, your Google Home, your Amazon Echo devices. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.